So tonight, NHL on TNT, 8 p.m. Eastern, Panthers, Hurricanes, Game 5 from Raleigh. The Panthers looking for a third consecutive Stanley Cup final appearance. Darren Pang joining us here. Of course, you've seen him throughout the season, playoffs as well, NHL on TNT. Pang, we're always good to have you on. This Panther team tonight, were you surprised that they didn't finish things off a couple nights ago?
No, I don't think so. I think you win that many games in a row against a really good team like Carolina. I get that all the question marks were on Rod Brindamore and Carolina, but that's a heck of a hockey team, and so there's going to be a time where your goalie, like Bob bailed them out and bailed them out and bailed them out, and eventually you're going to give up a good goal against. And I thought Stankoven's shot was unreal. I mean, I've watched that, I don't know, another 25 times to think how a right-hander going down the left side with a goalie on top of the crease, perfectly placed, beat him. I mean, it was just a world-class shot. So basically, it's a 1-0 hockey game. So am I surprised? No. I think it's always a good reminder, too, just how tough the competition is. And I don't think anybody needs reminders like the Florida Panthers do, because they've been through it all. But I think it's always just another reminder that the other team's not going to throw their sticks in the middle of the ice and just go away meekly into the night. So tonight's game, I think, is going to be just as competitive. It's given Carolina a little bit of hope going back on their ice, and maybe just trying to make sure that their fans also feel something positive, whereas everybody's talking about disappointed. Everybody's been in Carolina, going 0 for, it seems like 100 in the conference final. So it's going to be a tough one again tonight to wrap things up.
As someone who's been in the room, as a player and certainly long time as a broadcaster like yourself, what is it like, you think, for these guys? I mean, in this case, it's Carolina, but what is it like for these guys in those moments leading up to an elimination game? Because, compared to, say, like the NBA, where, you're down 3-0 or even down 3-1, it's really difficult to come back. The other team's usually a lot better than you if you're in that spot. But in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it really does seem like that fourth win is the hardest to get.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the spirit of our game. I mean, it's the badge of honor that you have to take a shot off the forehead or block a shot with your foot, or you know go back to the room, get several stitches, and come back on the bench again. I don't know. Our game is very unique, and I'm really, it's been a long time since I played, but just remembering how tough your teammates are and how much you don't want to disappoint the guys sitting beside you is ultimately what it's all about. And even when you're retired for 30 years and you run into an old teammate and you say, "Man, I can't, I'll never forget that moment where you had a torn MCL, but you went back out there and played." You remember those things more than you remember a great pass or a great goal or a great hit. And I think that's ultimately what drags a team back into the fight, is that the honor of not letting your teammate down. So yes, finishing off a series, everybody knows it's the toughest one. And, when you're at home, especially, you've romped through it. You're up 3-0. You've got maybe family in town. You've got maybe 4 or 5 days off. If the other series starts on the 5th or the 7th, you've got lots of time. You're maybe thinking about, I'm going to bring my buddies back. We're going to play some golf. We're going to get some time off. Those are things that all of a sudden your brain starts wandering a little bit, and bang, you get hit right in the nose. So again, just constant reminders of how difficult it is to close out a series and how difficult it is to win. I mean, it could be one injury away. Zach Hyman's a good example right now. The Edmonton Oilers, they win that game last night. They're leading 3-1. Zach Hyman's out now for the playoffs. I mean, Sam Reinhart's a good example. That could have been worse. That could have been way worse than what it was. And all of a sudden you're without not just a real intelligent, cerebral hockey player, one of the brightest that Paul Maurice has said that many times that he's ever been around, but also a guy that runs your PK. He's on your power play. He's even strength. So you don't want to leave it to chance that one of your teammates could be hurt and done. So that's when you've got to take care of things and make sure you're really sharp and on top of your game.
So Reinhart, Mikkola, and AJ Greer, they're all expected back in the lineup tonight, Paul Maurice announced.
Great
How
news.
much do you think, great news, how much do you think them being up 3-0 led to them not playing last game? Is it possible the Panthers were a little bit cautious?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not there and inside the room, but I would say absolutely yes. these guys monitor injuries so well. I'm just amazed at the medical staff of all the teams in the NHL, and how they know that in 3 days this injury, whether it's a knee or it's a hip or it could be a minor groin, it could be a shoulder tweak or a wrist injury or whatever, and it's like we know that in 3 days the inflammation is going to go down in 42 hours, and we know that in 58 hours we're going to be able to tape it up, and you're going to be ready to go. And if it means not playing one game to get you ready for the rest of it, then that's what we're going to do. So yeah, I do believe that, and I do believe that if that was a game seven or an elimination game, I think you probably would have seen all three because none of them would want to be out of the lineup. So those are really big decisions and important decisions, and unselfish decisions for me. So and then I applaud them for that. And really, it's a 1-0 hockey game. So the guys that stepped in did a heck of a job.
Sergei Bobrovsky, I think he's 37 years old now.
Isn't
He's
he
won
50?
I mean, it feels
Not
like it, right?
48?
He's won 2 Vezinas, yet is it fair to say that he's still in his prime at this point of his career?
Yes, it's very fair to say, Zeb. I totally agree with you. A lot of goaltenders just get better with age. They just do. And it might just be because, well, health is always that's everything in life. I mean, if you're not healthy and you're older, you're not going to be able to play. I watched Jonathan Quick several games this year, and he looked like 2014 Jonathan Quick. Now, why is that? Is it the strength of his legs, his core, or is it a different technique in the net? I do know that Rob Tallis, the goalie coach for the Florida Panthers, does a really good job in being flexible with his goalies, knowing what they need and what they don't need. And if Bob says, I need to be on the ice a little bit longer, Rob Tallis is going to say, okay, get it done. And then let's get out of the gym a little bit earlier, or let's do something else. Maybe tomorrow we'll go over a little video. Maybe we'll go over some tendencies that we saw on the power play against you, or a right-hand shot like Stankoven coming down that angle. Is there something more we can do? But I got a better feel too for Bob because Spencer Knight got obviously traded to the Blackhawks, where I work as an analyst, besides the TNT job. So I got to talk to him an awful lot and how influential Bob has been to Spencer Knight. And I noticed a lot of tendencies and nuances and habits that Spencer has that he said I directly got them from Bob. So so anyway, I can see how and why they would make that move and make that trade, because Bob's not going away. That's the facts. And this allows Spencer Knight to grow as a goaltender. But there was a goalie that we talked about when I was younger. Johnny Bower didn't make it to the NHL until his 30s. Now, a lot of fans don't know who Johnny Bower is, but he's one of the greats and he's a Hall of Famer. And back in the original six, there's only 6 goalies, and every one of the 6 goalies that played, they never gave up their net in fear of losing their net. And so there are a lot of goalies. Tim Thomas comes to mind. I mentioned Jonathan Quick. Certainly Bobrovsky is as elite as elite is. And technically, he just looks even more sound than he looked 5 years ago. So, I mean, that's credit to him. He's done a wonderful job. And so is Robbie Tallis with him.
So speaking of the Blackhawks and that Spencer Knight trade, Spencer Knight, Seth Jones, that looks like a trade that was probably a home run for both teams, right?
Phenomenal. Yes, absolutely. And to think that, Seth didn't, there wasn't a whole lot of teams on his list with a no trade, no move. And as you well know, I think there was 3 teams, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think it was Dallas, Colorado, and Florida. And so I think for Bill Zito and for Kyle Davidson to make this trade, that worked out for both. I thought that maybe the Hawks would have to eat up a little bit more salary. They 25% was taken by Billy and Florida. That's a great move for them. I mean, they get an unbelievable defenseman that eats minutes, that gets out of his own zone as well as any defenseman in the league. And if you need him to be on that power play, which they have, he has that ability as well. So, and besides that, I got to know Seth, a real good person, a real pro. And clearly he didn't want to be part of a rebuild. So this was what an ultimate gift for him and for the Hawks to be able to get a first-round pick and to get Spencer Knight. It was just a win-win for both sides for sure. And I know how much Spencer Knight appreciated the Florida Panthers. We've talked an awful lot about his experience there in Florida. So good for both sides.
How well do you know Brad Marchand over the years? Because for me, as a Panther fan, I'm like most Panther fans. Darren, I don't know if I've ever hated a hockey player more. And now as he joins us, it's like, oh my God, I love having this guy on our team.
Yeah. Don't, isn't that what was said about so many players in the history of the game that were just a pain in the rear end all the way around, and whether it be a Claude Lemieux or a Max Lapierre, if you remember, back in the day. I remember there's always that player that you go, oh my God, and then somebody would tell you he's the best guy in the world, and you're like, yeah, but man, he just drives you crazy when he's on the other side, and I've done a lot of Bruins games over the years, and unfortunately for Brad, I've done a lot that has not gone his way. But you can see the fire inside his belly, the brain that he has, the motor that he has is really something else. And I think he's in a perfect spot there too. I mean, being anybody that can play Luostarinen or Lundell, like I think Sam Reinhart was in that right spot for probably 3 years or 2.5 years anyway. And that line can be a top line, or it can be a second line, or it can be a third line. One thing for sure, it's not a fourth line, that's for sure. But adding the intelligence of Brad and the age of Brad, I think it just worked out so well. So another one of these situations where if you're Sam Bennett or you're a Brad Marchand, and you see the culture that's there in Florida, and the fact that it's a well-oiled machine with an unbelievable coach and manager, you just want to stay. I mean, I could imagine that's when you take a big discount and say, I just want to be right here because this is the perfect spot for me. So I'm glad you appreciate Brad. I know he's great on TNT. The boys just love him. But because he's fun. He's got a great personality. But when the game starts, he turns it on. And I don't even think you've seen the ornery side of Brad just yet. I think there's another level of Brad Marchand for Florida Panther fans to see.
I got to tell you, that NHL on TNT crew, that whole studio, it's phenomenal. I mean, everybody knows, the NBA on TNT, it's the all-time greatest studio show. Everybody knows that. But like, they've replicated it with the NHL. Like, not to say that it's the greatest studio show ever. It's only been for a few years now, but man, like, it's fun and the personalities are great. And like you said, the players that they get on, there's a great rapport. It's a great crew you guys have.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm not in the studio very often, but I have been there, several times over the last couple of years, and I really, really like it too. I think there's something, to be that should be said about chemistry. I mean, Michelle Z is kind of the hockey, manager there. If you say she was actually with the old Atlanta Thrashers, and her husband was actually in production, on games as well. So she loves her hockey. She's done an incredible job of fighting for what she believes in and putting the right people together. And besides that, though, it's the set itself. Like when you're there, yeah, you might have Charles Barkley just kind of wander in, or maybe Zach. I was going to say Zach, Shaq. We call Shaq Hyman. Now I'm getting confused as to who's who there, but old Shaq Hyman likes to come in there as well, and that's really the cool part, is the camaraderie. And I can tell fans right now that I think we're on year 4. When I signed with TNT to be one of their analysts, I got a FaceTime from Charles Barkley right away. And it was like, welcome to the team, little fella. And I'm like,
he loves hockey.
Like, who
he
does
loves
that?
hockey.
He does love hockey, and he loves the camaraderie part of it. And Gretz is a big part of that as well, because he wants to put the right guys together, and they're so influential. They got the ears of the managers, and that's really significant. So thanks for saying that. I know that they work their tails off, and I think they do a great job for hockey. And I think the players really enjoy doing those interviews, because it's not just about the X's and O's. It's about more personality driven, which is great.
Lastly here for you, Darren, with the hockey world, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but would the hockey world enjoy a rematch in the Stanley Cup final?
Oh, I think so. I mean, if that would have ended up 4 straight last year, no. But the way that the Edmonton Oilers, put on their work boots and came back, it was incredible. And it shows you how hard it is to win 4 straight games. I think I put 3 as the number, and it proved last year. Florida up 3-0, bang, Edmonton comes back at 3-3. What was it, a 2-1 game or a 1-1 game midway through the game 7? Yeah. People say that, it's Canada, the ratings aren't going to be good in the States. Really? ESPN had that that series last year, and we have the final this year. Well, I tell you what, those ratings were pretty darn good last year, and I think everybody likes drama, and they sit on the edge of their seat no matter who's playing. If it's a game 6 in overtime, or if it goes to a game 7, man, that's when that's when you love the sport. Heck, I'll watch baseball when it gets to the 7th game. I'll watch basketball when it gets to the 7th game. So, and I'm a golf and hockey fan. So, I get it, and I think it would be fantastic. And I'm not leaving Dallas out of this by any stretch, or Carolina. But if you want to be hypothetical, and it got to that, I think we would all be excited at TNT. And I'm going to be. It's personally, I got golf set up in all 4 so far right now. So I'll be joining the crew for the final, and I'll have my sticks with me as well.
Yes. Well, like you heard, Darren, they're 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, Game 5, and TNT has the Stanley Cup Finals this year. Panger, always good catching up with you. Enjoy the game tonight and the Stanley Cup Final. Always love talking to you.
Thanks, pal. Enjoy it. Good luck tonight.